Welcome, and thanks for joining us today. You're listening to the Women's Broadcast Television Expert Spotlight Show. WBTN is the all-women's internet television station with content that's created by women and for women. And I'm your host, Shea Vaughn. Today, joining us at WBTVN Expert is just an amazing woman. Let me just tell you a little bit about her. Martina Hanna is living testimony that it is possible to turn any or every part of one's life around. She has spent 47 years turning herself around and is finally on the road to being complete, whole, and happy. Please help me to welcome Martina. Hi, Martina. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's just wonderful to be here. Absolutely wonderful.
I love your background. I see that beautiful picture behind you. How lovely is that?
Fabulous, isn't it? Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah, it is.
Magnificent.
So stay still with that. And tell me a little bit about your childhood and what brought you to where you are today.
Yeah. So from a very young age, I experienced mental, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. And the more I spoke out and the more I confided in people to stop what was happening to me, the more they took advantage of me. For example, our local parish priest, when I was making my first Holy Communion, I'm raised Catholic, and when I was making my first Holy Communion, I was completely terrified. And I was afraid that I would walk onto the altar on the day of my communion and this bolt of lightning would come down and everybody would see that I just wasn't clean. Oh. And that's how I felt.
Yeah.
I remember going to bed at night praying to God, please God, what will I do? And I got this little whisper in my ear and I thought, I know, for my first confession, I will tell the priest. I'll tell our priest what's happening to me. And he'll be able to stop it, because in Ireland back then, they had so much power. And so 7 years of age, I practiced, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. These are my sins. And this is my first confession. And I went in that day and I said that. And I told him a few lies. I didn't have any sins. I really didn't. I had nothing to confess except one thing. And so I told him what was happening to me and by who. And he gave me 20 Our Fathers, 20 Hail Marys, 20 active contritions. And he told me to go away and to never tell lies again, because nobody would ever believe me.
Wow.
I know, I was just devastated.
I can imagine.
Devastated. And I said those prayers and I went back into school, and a week later, this priest came to our door of the classroom, and we thought he was putting us through our paces for our first communion, and he wasn't. He was there to look for me. And I did a sigh of relief, because I thought, okay, everything's going to stop now. Everything. He's going to change it. And he called me outside, looked for me, called me outside, and he asked me what was happening, and that the priest that I had been to confession with had told him. And he completely abused my trust, because he then went on to abuse me. And so the more I spoke out, the more I was either sent away to school or I was put out of my family of origin. And so I battled depression from a very young age. My simple terminology for depression is that I was somewhere that I didn't want to be, and I felt powerless to change it. I knew I had the power inside of me. I knew that. At 7, I found my voice. But I battled through life, and I looked at my family of origin, and I didn't want to be like them. And I didn't want to be like my abusers, not at all. And I didn't want their stories about me to be true, not at all.
Right.
And so I went through life, and I was very successful in business. I started my first business when I was 14, and because I thought that if I had an awful lot of money, that I could get away from all that and that I would be happy. I don't mind admitting I was honest. I'm honest enough to admit that that's what I thought. If you had money, you'll be happy.
Everything's going to be okay then, right? Yeah.
It's so not true, Shea. It's so not true. That. So I knew. So I spent most of my life broken, damaged, and feeling completely lost. And my daily inner shouts were, who am I? What am I? And what am I all about? And who do I want to be? Me. Who does Martina Hanna want to be when she's finally done growing me? Who do I want to be? And before I knew it, I married a carbon copy of my dad. I had 4 children. They were living in a nightmare, really. It was roaring and screaming and shouting. And I was still adamant that my past would not dictate their future. I was adamant. I didn't know how that would be. But I kept doing a 360. I kept saying, right, what do I need to break next? What do I need to break next? And I'm deeply spiritual. And I had to believe in something bigger than myself. And I always have believed in God. I never felt, even though that priest did what he did to me, I never pointed the finger and blamed God, because that was on that priest. And so what led to this point of me being, I can tell you, I am complete. I am whole. I am happy. I don't look like the woman that I used to look like. But what came to this was that 2 years ago, my children, actually, tail end, maybe May 2013, my children called me and said, you know, Mom, you're good to go. You've done a great job. We don't need you so much anymore. Because when I left my ex-husband, and I took us out of an abusive relationship, and I left him 7.5 times. I read somewhere that a woman leaves her husband 7.5 times.
Really?
I read that somewhere, Shea. I don't know where I read it.
So I have to ask you this, because we hear that, and I know what that statistic is.
Yes.
The question that I have is, why? Why that many times?
Yeah. Well, I don't know why statistically it is that many times.
Good for you.
But I can only tell you my experience. You leave, you want to leave, you know that you're not in the right place. You know that this connection, this relationship just isn't right. But you have 4 children from 9 months up to 6 years. And there's a whole amount of guilt around that, because you're leaving, but then you don't necessarily know, is this the right decision for the children? And you're breaking up the family. And then, you know something? I was mentally berated, and I was told, you know, you won't ever get these children. Our children will never want to be with you. And I also read somewhere that if you tell somebody something, if you tell them a negative, one negative, it takes 11 positives to even try and override that negative.
Yeah, isn't that terrible?
Yeah,
terrible.
Yeah. So I was browbeaten. I was totally browbeaten, and I kept leaving and coming back, and leaving and coming back, and it was like a yo-yo. I'm sure people were frustrated. The only thing I can say to you is this: please understand. Anyone that's watching this, understand. You have got to walk in the shoes of a man or a woman that are in an abusive relationship first. It's not our place to judge. I know that people looked at me and saw me so successful in other areas of my life and wondered why. It was my journey. Would I allow that to happen now? No. But I've learned so much from that, and I have supported and encouraged a lot of women that have come into my life. And I've nurtured them, and I've said, look, this is if this isn't somewhere you want to be, trust me, it's not as simple as just walking out the door. You have got to have a plan in place. You've got to be complete in yourself and whole in yourself so that you can follow through. And that was a big sign for me that I'm complete and I'm happy and I'm whole, because I'm in a great relationship with myself. And I tell you what, it's wonderful.
Oh, that was so cute. Relationship with yourself. Isn't that the most important relationship that you have? Seriously?
Yes.
And so important. And people don't get that. They think they need somebody else to complement them, to make them whole. And God was great enough to make us whole just on our own.
And you know something? Honestly, I went around like the letter C. And I really thought, I'm balancing this laptop, folks, so if I could, I'd bring up my other hand. And I thought that we went do, and we went around like the letter C, and we were looking for another C to make us whole.
Yeah.
But I thought, that's what I thought. And guess what? I was like the Sesame Kid for most of my life. Can you tell me how to get? Can you tell me how to get?
Yeah.
Because people would say to me, true happiness comes from within. I believe that to be true. But can you tell me how to get within? Please, can you tell me how to get within? Or they'd say, before you can love anyone else, you got to love yourself. Believe that to be true. Can you tell me how to love myself?
Well, I just got to make a comment on that right now, because I have to tell you that for years I heard the same thing.
Yes.
And I certainly didn't come from an abused background like you did, but it wasn't the perfect background either.
No.
But here's the thing. I used to hear people say you have to learn to love themselves. They weren't even saying it to me. I hear them say it to other people. And I was like, what does that mean? And I can remember finally saying out loud, I don't love myself.
Yes.
I don't love myself. But what it taught me as I went through life, that the better choices that I made, the more that I gave to other people and serviced other people, the more I loved myself, because I realized that I was really put on this earth, as all of us are, seriously, is to love yourself by loving others.
That's right.
And that's really what it's all about.
It is. Totally true. Totally true. But Shea, I was so empty inside.
I can imagine.
I was completely empty inside. And I put on a good face.
Yes.
Everything was okay, because in Ireland we sweep everything under the carpet. Everything is swept under the carpet. And foolishly they think that nobody is going to come in one day and spring clean and that carpet is going to be moved. You know, foolishly they think that. But what led, to answer your question, what led me to be happy and complete, first of all, my purpose for such a long time was to serve my children.
Of course.
Because I wanted my children going out happy. I don't know how I got this inspiration, but I got an inspiration one day to create a mission statement for my children. Mm-hmm. And it's that I could put my hand on my heart and say that I did the very best that I could with all that I have, and that I'm sending 4 happy, whole, complete, loving, caring, serving human beings out into the world. And I mantraed that out constantly. And that kept me focused. But what happened was, when my children said, we don't need you so much, Mom, anymore, you've done a great job, you're good. I remember saying, what? I said, whoa, hang on a minute. I stopped being Martina the businesswoman because I knew that you needed me full time. So what you mean? And I could just hear, go do your thing, go do your thing. And I stood there. And I went, oh my God, what is my thing?
Yeah, what is my thing? What is it? What do I go and do now? I spend all of this time helping to raise my kids and to give them something positive in their life, and certainly make sure that they weren't abused in the same way, or sexually abused like you were. And then all of a sudden, but you know, we forget that those days come, and that the reason that we raise, if we're good parents, seriously, raise them to be independent so that they can go out.
Yes, I know. Yeah. But it comes as a bit of a shock.
Well, it sure does. But I certainly know why, you know, parents break down so much when their kids go off to college and all of these things, because it is new chapters in our lives. Absolutely. And all of these new chapters bring, you know, joy in a lot of ways. And yet turning the page is not always the easiest thing to do.
No. It certainly is not. It certainly is not. And I just remembered, go do your thing, and not knowing. And again, the question came up, can you tell me? Can you tell me how to get to
doing it? Exactly. And I knew. So what was your thing? Let's get to, okay. And I want to make one comment.
Yes.
That when you told the priest, and of course everyone was saying, how can you tell such a lie? I had a friend that I was coaching, and she was sexually abused by her stepfather. Yes. And it was years later, she had kids, and then she realized that her younger sister's kids were going over to the house and staying. But when she had addressed it with her mom, her mother turned around and said to her, I can't believe I have a daughter that could tell me such a lie. So I've come to the conclusion, and that's being abandoned by your mother. I mean, you just feel so abandoned. There's nobody that believes you. It's just, it's a horrible thing to go through. But you're telling a lie and making them feel that you're doing that is because they don't have the courage to address it, because you know why? They'd have to take some kind of action and do something about it, and they don't want to.
And you know, Shea, to be honest with you, you could throw and dump any amount of abuse on me. You could do that. You could do that. The one catastrophic, heinous crime that was committed against me was by my mother. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know how it is that I knew from a very young age. Well, I do know, because I was remembering my future, but I wrote from a very young age. I wrote songs and I sang songs, and I can remember singing what was happening to me, and my parents looking at me saying, shut up, shut up. And so I started to write journals, and my journals were being taken by only one person, my mother, because she was the only one that came into the room and cleaned. And so I learned to write in code, and I thought, God damn you, you know what? If you want to take my journals and you want to read my stuff and not do anything for me, I am going to do a little mind trick with you. And I learned to write in code, and I learned to write proficiently between numbers and letters. And I could scribe like that. And she continued to do that. She continued, and never, ever. And the worst thing that ever happened to me was that being abandoned like that by your mother. Now, don't get me wrong. I learned tremendous lessons from my mother too. I did get great blessings from her. But that whole sense of her not believing me, she would call me a liar. She would say, you're a liar, you're a liar. And she'd say to me, little pig should be seen and not heard. Little pig should be seen.
That's terrible, calling names and whatever. It's kind of like being in prison and they put you in the hot and cold water.
Yes.
So you tell me that you got great things, from her. I'm sure that you did.
I did.
But we can't exist without consistency.
No, and you're so, oh my God, honestly, I've just got to say something here to you. I'm learning, I'm having aha moments here with you, because you just get it. You just
thank you for that. I just really at an early age understood all of those things, and my mom was the opposite kind of person. My mother ended up marrying my father the third time. He'd lived with another woman and had 3 children. One of them was in a foster home, and the other ones, their mother was an alcoholic, and they didn't even make sure that they went to school. My mother took those kids when she went back to him and took them to raise them. And I said to her, why would you do that? And I was close to them. It wasn't that I didn't want you to. I needed to understand. And she says, those are the pearls. Those are the gifts that come out of all greatness.
My God.
I mean, just, lessons that I learned through her because of her compassion and her willingness to reach your hand out. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I understand it. Thank you for those.
I know that, and it makes me telling my story easier, because I know that you get that, and I hope that our audience will understand that. So I spent all of my time looking at my past and changing it and turning it around, which is the reason for my book called Turn It Around. But I kept turning it around. But to answer your question, so what's my thing? And I knew that I had a few, I call them glitches in my suit of armor. I knew that I had a few glitches in my armor, and that, okay, so my kids have told me to go do my thing, great. I have a bit of time now, I'll address these, I'll figure out how to get myself whole and complete, and then I'll be happy. I figured then I'll be happy. And I went to this therapist who came recommended to me. And if there's one thing I would say to people to do, is really make sure that you're going to a proper qualified therapist, really. So I went to this lady that was recommended to me. I remember I knew that her practice was around the corner from my family of origin. I knew that. What I wasn't prepared for was the day that I walked through her practice doors was the day that I was transported back to the 1970s. When I walked in, the carpets were the same, the curtains, the door handles were the same. Everything was the same. And I was time warped. And I remember saying to her, looking up and looking at the surround and going, oh my God, I'm in my bedroom. I remember saying to her, am I going to be okay? And she said, yeah. I said, am I going to be okay? She said, yes. Why? I said, because I'm in my crime scene. Am I going to be okay? And I wasn't. I completely unraveled. It was too much. I didn't know. I've always functioned with depression, but I didn't know I couldn't function this time. And I just plummeted. And my children did everything they could to save me. Everything. They told me every day, Mom, you're fantastic. You've got this. You can do this, Mom. You're great. Keep going, Mom. Keep going. And I really wanted to keep going. But one day, it was the 16th of February, 2014. And I came home And my son had said, don't worry, ma'am, if you drop me to my friends, when you come home, Rebecca, my eldest daughter, will be there. And I went, okay. And I got to the gates of my home and I looked and I went, she's not here. Oh, Lord, she's not here. And I knew I was in trouble. And I went through the house and I could feel the cloud dropping and dropping and dropping. And I sat in a room and I looked ahead of me and I know I was in serious trouble because I had no vision. I could just see blackness. And yet there was 2 skylights above me, 2 windows there and 2 windows behind. And what happened that day completely changed my life. I had the most profound awakening. I had this well of emotion flowing out of me. I just couldn't stop crying. I was heaving in tears. And then I got incredibly angry, really angry, and I let God have it. I threw my hands up into the air and I went, here you go, here you go. You've got 2 choices, 2 choices. And I told him choice A was I'm going to get well, particularly, spectacularly, consistently well, so that I can do the work that you sent me down here to do this. You sent me down here. I am here to serve. You sent me. So let's get on with it. Let me get well. Let me get better so that I can do that work. Or B, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. And at that moment, I surrendered. And I went from dis-ease to ease. And I sat there and I went, oh, this is nice. This is really nice. Equilibrium. Yeah, I'm ready to go now. I'm ready to leave this earth. Because that pain is too much. Too much.
It's too much to carry around. Yeah. And I think that we all have to hit those walls before we can turn it around, which is one of the things that I know that your book is all about. It's about turning around. You certainly have done that with your life. So let's talk about what's going on in your life now and what you have to look forward to.
So now I am happy, complete and whole. I'm in a great relationship with myself. And now I'm ready to serve. I'm ready to serve humanity in the only way that I know how, by encouraging, empowering people to turn their lives around in the same way that I did. Because guess what? I know how to get within to get happy. I know how to love thyself. And I know that when I learned that when you like thyself, when you honor thyself and like thyself, you start to fall in love with yourself.
Right.
And then you cease to sabotage yourself. And most importantly, you will not allow anyone else to sabotage you.
Yeah.
So what's going on in my life is this, is that.
So you laid all those heavy burdens down.
Yeah.
You said goodbye to them. And now you've met yourself where you are today, instead of going back and forth all the time to visit.
I'm going this way.
You're going forward.
I'm going this way. And like I came here to do an interview with Jack Canfield. I did my interview yesterday. I've written a book called Turn It Around. The whole purpose of my book is because I am here to serve humanity, and I am the proceeds of all of that are going. I have 2 great causes in my life. One is mental health. We lose a lot of people to suicide in Ireland, a lot of people to suicide. And my next cause is the homelessness, because I've moved 5 times in 6 years and 4 times in 2, and it's not because I like moving home.
Right.
When I left my husband, I walked away from everything in the strong belief that I created it once, I could create it again. And so I'm ready to do that. But I am so excited about my future. And I came out here. It's so amazing how things work. So I came to do my interview with Jack Canfield because I chose him specifically to help me tell my story.
Yes.
And I ended up, for the first time ever, and this tell you, like, I'm so in myself, I decided to do Airbnb. Oh my God, I met an angel. That's all I can tell you.
An undercover angel.
I met an undercover angel. And the reason
Lockwood is who he's talking about. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, the reason why I decided to click yes to her was because I saw her Wi-Fi code. She sent me a message. Her Wi-Fi code was undercover angel. And I said straight away, are you an angel? And she said, yes, I am. And I said, me too. That was it. Done. I was in. But so I came here. I met Lisa. I met you.
Yeah, we did. And it was wonderful. I was actually down teaching a spin class, and you had walked out to go down and kind of check it out and everything. And we stood there and we talked. So I think that future-wise, we want to get you on WBTVN
Yes.
as a host, and I know that
yes,
you're
I'm excited about this. I have
Very
got to
excited.
say,
Yeah.
like for the past 2 years, I've been living in the tech space, wanting, really wanting to create something what you've created. And I left when I had that brief chat with you today. I left and I cried tears of joy. And I went, oh my God, thank you, God. And I said, I said to Lisa, these are tears of joy, finally tears of joy, because this great platform is here to enable me to share my story so that it will change the lives of people globally. And I'm so grateful, so grateful for what yourself and your partners have achieved here with this.